last step before we paint. Since I've seen you last, I can't quite remember, but we have, I mean, the full car got sanded up to 600 grit, certain areas got primer, you saw that. We've cleaned everything off a number of times. We taped everything off. You can see all the doors and door panels are fully taped off so we can do the door jambs. And then the last step that we just finished up doing was wiping the whole car down with TSP, just a paint prep. A prep all is what I was looking for. I just couldn't find it at Home Depot. And this is also a paint prep. So I've wiped cars with acetone, with wet rags before, Dawn dish soap. So I don't really, whatever, I'm not worried. We've wiped it all down, and now I'm gonna try not to touch the car too much unless I'm wearing rubber gloves. But again, I've done this a number of times and I've touched the car a million times. I'm not that worried. Tomorrow we're gonna paint. It's supposed to be warm enough. I have tack cloths that I'll probably give the whole thing a quick once over with a tack cloth once it's in the booth. I still have to get this big dusty blazer out of here. I've got to, you know, open this thing up, move a bunch of cars around outside. I gotta set up my paint booth. It's an inflatable one. So that's gonna kick a bunch of crap around. So after I get this thing in the paint booth, then I'll give it a once over with a tack cloth. And I'm hoping that'll get it to where it is now again, nice and clean. Oh, I set up the Husky compressor. If you wanna check this out, it's a 60-gallon compressor from Home Depot. This is what I'm gonna use. I used to use the 29-gallon Harbor Freight dude, and that guy did fine. I painted tons of cars with that, pretty big cars, and I just ran it almost continuously. I was able to give that one a break when I was refilling my paint, so I thought it worked out okay, but this shouldn't cycle on and off as much. And I might show you how I'm setting up the paint gun, I might not. But I've got that all hooked up, and I had the 250 volt already outlet there. I just had to wire it up. So that's what I'll be using to paint, and then I have a paint booth I'm gonna set up in the garage so that I'm not really worried about rain. I just don't want all the other dust sitting everywhere to be settling and poofing up when I'm trying to spray the paint. That's why I got the paint booth. So I'm gonna be doing that inside this garage since I just sanded everywhere. Okay, we're gonna try a voiceover on this one since the sound from the compressor was pretty loud. But what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing a pre-filter. That actually might be Hunter. I think she was filming a lot of this, but that's a pre-filter to strain the paint before you put it into the mixing cup that was just fumbled. Those red dashes are the mixing ratios that you use for your paint. I can explain more about that in a future video. That was a paper towel. Quality stuff here, guys. That's the paint I'm using. That's probably the reducer for the base coat is what we're looking at. That's the inflatable blow-up tent. And that is the compressor, 60-gallon from Home Depot. That's some blurry camera footage. That is the ratio. Looks like she's showing 3 to 1 to 1. This is only 2 different parts. It's a base coat and a reducer, so you've got 3 to 1 is what was drawn on there. There's the acetone. We're just using that to clean stuff up with that. I got those mixing cups from Home Depot as well. That's a mixing cup that came with a paint thingy. You gotta pause this. There's the clear coat that I'm using. It's a 5-star product. Again, I don't recommend that clear coat. It was about 3.5 years old, but it did not turn out very well either of the times that I used it. And now we're popping in the booth here. There's the Camaro on jack stands. I've got the mirrors off to the side to be able to do, and I do have some additional lighting hanging on the side of that particular booth. Here I'm trying to set up the Harbor Freight gun. I used to just buy a new Harbor Freight gun for each paint job because they were like 30 bucks. And I just factored that into the cost of the paint. This one was broken. The trigger was actually jammed. Don't have much footage of that, but it didn't work. So I ended up having to reuse an old Harbor Freight gun, which that also probably did not help. Now also when you're using those paint strainers that I was showing you earlier, you don't really need to put that pre-filter in the gun. You can leave it out. as long as you strain your paint before you dump it in there. Now we're in the booth with the Harbor Freight paint gun. I'm not a huge fan of it. I thought maybe it's okay for base coat, but I wouldn't recommend using it for clear coat. It comes out with a lot of orange peel. If you spend the money on like the Black Widow gun from Harbor Freight, or if you get some other guns online, the clear does come out a heck of a lot better. So with the paint here, you're just gonna go over it a number of times, do your base coats. You don't need to lay them on too heavy, especially in the beginning.
Here I wanted to show you guys what it's like mixing all of the paint. We are fortunate to have one person spraying and then the other mixing up the paint, so we're always ready to keep going. And those marks on the side of the mixing cup are super helpful, especially if you use, bright red or, I don't know, purple, a color you can see outside of the black line. And I just mix up the ratios, mix it with a plastic utensil or a mixing like paint stick, and then run it through the mesh filter while it goes into the gun. And then between, I am cleaning out the mixing cup with acetone, making sure that there's no paint residue before I get to mix the next cup.
Okay, here's a shot through the booth with after the clear coat's been laid down. The clear coat didn't come out great on this one. I don't like the 5-star product, and I really don't like the Harbor Freight cheap gun for clear coat. And I mean, hard to see through the I don't know, plastic window of the paint booth, but I might still be spraying here. I might just be walking around.
It's been a couple days now. You're looking at the car. I'll show you some closer up shots, but just a couple things. Oh man, it's been a week now, so it's dusty and got dog hair, and I started playing with something in the back. But I'll have to wipe all that off before I do what I'm about to do, but I'm going to cut and buff it. I had a feeling I was probably gonna have to cut and buff this stuff. I will say though, I wouldn't ever recommend 5-star clear coat. This is the second time I've used it now. It's come out really terrible both times with orange peel. And I've worked with other clear coats before, same guns, same PSI, same setup, and it's laid down a lot flatter. This clear coat, I even tried adding about 5% reducer, 5-7% reducer to it, and that just gave me a big run on the side of it. So it thinned it down enough to run, but not to lay flat. So, I thought I was gonna have to buff it. I didn't expect it to look, I'm not very happy with it, but buffing it, and I was gonna wet sand. I'm just hoping I don't have to. So, and I got this new buffing situation I'm gonna try out. So you can see the reflections and then look at the light, right? You can see it, it's gloss, there's a clear coat, but there's a lot of dust on it too. So bear with me, it's dog hair. That's not in the paint, it's just been sitting for a couple days, and now you can see all the dust I just wiped around. So there is dust in it, but the shadows, there's not a lot of clarity. And the hood is okay. The fenders, some of the areas of the fenders are okay, but like certain areas right here in the fender is really bad. I mean, look at all that orange peel. That's awful. The door, not great. A lot of orange peel on the door. I think right back here is probably the worst spot for the orange peel. So I think somewhere back in this area is where I'm gonna start with the trunk came out pretty orangey as well. And yeah, this has a ton of dust because I started playing with that. I do have to wipe all this up, and that'll obviously get rid of some of the way it's looking on camera, but it's still not great. So what I'm gonna do, what you normally would do is wet sand all this down with 2000 grit, then 3000, and then you'd start doing, like I use Meguiar's 105 and then a 205 or a 210. Those are the 4 stages that I use to get rid of all the orange peel. But I'd rather not. Wet sanding, especially with black, and I was just doing it by hand, it leaves really deep scratches, and I found them hard to get out on that truck. So I'm gonna try these denim pads. I keep calling them jean pads because they're made of jeans material, but they're denim pads. I guess they're not in that bucket. But apparently they're supposed to cut through orange peel, and then I would just be doing that and then 210 buffing with Meguiar's. So that's my plan. I did put in the sunroof. Now no more headliner sagging, so that's cool. But let me show you I don't know, you can see the paint with the orange peel. Some areas are not as bad as others, but, and there's a bunch of dust on here still, so. I'm gonna start moving with the polishing. Let's see how well the denim pads do. Okay, here is the Meguiar's 105 that I'm using. This is the denim pad. I mean, it's literally just jeans, denim, sewed onto one of these buffer pads. Here's the, I don't know, I bought it off Amazon. This dude, I saw his video on YouTube, Ostrin, it's a channel, and he was showing how to use it. If it gets rid of orange peel, at least for the most part, way better than wet sanding, so I'm gonna give that a go. I've done a little bit with the denim pad, and I think it's a hoax. You can see the line right in the middle of the trunk right there. Still orange peel, still real bad orange peel. There's a light behind you. I mean, there's also dust over here and other stuff, but it didn't do it. So I am going to wet sand the car, I guess. That sucks. I mean, this is maybe 3 passes with the denim pad, and the orange peel is just horrible on this clear coat. Some of the worst I've ever seen, so oh well. Here's what it looks like midway through. So what you're looking for when you're wet sanding is you don't want to see any of this. This means it's not a smooth surface. You want to get it down to this. This will buff up nice and flat and glossy. When you see all these little pinholes, that's still going to cause your orange peel. You want it to be nice and flat. Now even that, there's still a couple things in there, so that's just kind of the process, and you keep going, and it does take a while. So I did pick up a palm sander, and the only one I could find, I wasn't at a paint store, I'm just looking at Home Depot, it's a Sunday. The only one I could find that might accept these little pads here is this guy with the hooks on the side, which I hate these ones, so I'm gonna see how it goes. The back is foam, so if it does slip off, it shouldn't cause a huge problem and gouge it, but I'm gonna put that on there and see if this makes the process any faster, because wet sanding by hand it's horrible. It's not perfect, but I blocked everything on the trunk. What I did here, I taped off the edges still, and I didn't wet sand all the way to the corners, because I've had bad luck in the past trying to buff a corner, just removing all the paint. So I don't care if there's a little bit of orange peel up here is my plan. I just did the main areas. I'm probably not gonna touch the wing, at least this summer. Now it's kind of funny, the reflection in the wet sanded spot is clearer than the orange peel reflection. So this is 1200, 2000, and then 3000. And you can see it's not dead perfect. That's gonna be an orange peel, that's an orange peel. There's a little in there, there's like a sanding mark here. It's not dead perfect. The trunk is one of the areas that was the worst as far as roughness goes. I think I sanded it down with 36 grit originally, and just, I'm glad I did some filler primer back here, but it's not dead perfect. But I think hopefully we get these scratches out, and then I think it'll be enough to make me happy. So I'm gonna start hitting it with, I'm gonna try the jean pad again, just because I don't really like the other foam pads I was using with the 105. So I'm gonna do jean pad with 105, and then I'll go to a buffing pad with 210. Here's what it's looking like after the jean pad with the 105. This took about 4 minutes, just for reference. Now the reflection is a lot clearer. There's me, but okay, you know what? That's still, it's clearer than before all of this. It's a lot flatter. There's still a bunch of, like, you can see scratches in the paint. I'm hoping the 210 will take this out. And I still see a little bit of a, like a buff line. Like there's a white haze here along the bottom for whatever reason, and maybe a bit up here as well. So if you guys know, I'm sure you guys are better than me about buffing. I'm just teaching myself. But let me know in the comments, I mean, if you guys have a better idea for orange peel or any of this stuff. But let's do the high polish 210. Oh, surprise, it sucks. There's a ton of fine scratches in there. You know, you can see them. This is after the 210. Over here still has, this is just the jean pad, so it's still a little bit smudgy. But yeah, there's a good look. I mean, it's pretty darn flat. There's, you know, some orange peel chips here and there, but you can see pretty good definition of that light. But you can also see a ton of scratches. So let me know in the comments. I'm not a body guy. I don't know what's better. The clarity of the paint with pretty deep orange peel, but there's no scratches in this paint. It's clear, or a bunch of scratched up paint, but flat. So, if you guys have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Okay, the hood is completely done. This is being wet sanded, and the trunk is done. The trunk is buffed out and the hood's buffed out. So I did that. I did the hood with everything with 2000 and then 3000, and you can still see, you know, still some stuff in there, but there's a ton of scratches. And I don't think I'm really getting those out unless I redo the whole thing. But if you are watching this, save yourself the trouble, go to Harbor Freight and get these little foam pads. They are 2000 grit. I mean, they've got them like 1000 up to 4000. A bunch of different fits, but they go right on the back of a power sander. And power sanders don't really leave any, they don't leave any scratches, so I'm pretty sure this is gonna buff out dead clean. And this took me maybe 20 seconds, probably like 10 seconds actually, of just moving it on there. So don't leave it on there for too long. And 2000 may be even more than I need to do, but no reason to bother sanding anything by hand. And maybe if it bugs me enough, I'll redo the whole hood with the power sander to see if I can get the scratches out. But otherwise, I'm gonna do the rest of the car in just a couple minutes with the power sander. So save yourself the time. I'm really worried about this area. Can we get at least a like or a comment in the chat for somebody else's girlfriend or woman doing body work with them? Wet sanding? A like or a comment, at least one. I do read every single one. I get about 2 per video. Give me at least one and mention something about your girlfriend wet sanding or doing body work?
Doing a check-in. The entire car has gone through the 110 mirror glaze. Let's see what you guys think.
Don't look like a mirror though. It's a broken mirror.
Miles is gonna hit it with the 210. So we'll see how that comes out. You can see my reflection. Thumbs up.
They're McGuire's products. We're using Harbor Freight pads, Harbor Freight Bauer buffer. I don't know. Looks well enough, I suppose. I guess I'll start on this side.
Looks pretty good. So that's the check-in. You can see reflections.
The turd has been polished. Probably looks about the exact same as when it started. In my opinion, it looks better. Certain areas did better than others. Certain areas have more scratches. Certain areas are cleaner, but overall, she looks a lot flatter. The reflections you can see, they're a lot clearer. I don't know if you can, reverse in the video, but the mirror finish, in my opinion, is a lot more clear. And that's what I'll notice cruising down the road. I mean, you can still see that. The hood and the trunk, not great. These ones, I didn't do the power sander, but certain finishes on the door are pretty darn mirror finish. And we did end up having to block sand with 1200 by hand. And then we came back with the power sander at 2000 to do this, and then polished it with 110 and then 210. And that's what you're seeing on the doors, which is almost, as far as I can tell, that's as perfect of a finish as you can get. The stuff on the hood, this I did all by hand, so you can still see a ton of scratches. And I could probably fix those and make them look more like the door, but for now, I'm good with it. I'm done with this paint. This stuff sucked. It's not fun. Black is a terrible color, don't pick it. That'll do it. It's good for me. I'm gonna assemble the rest of the car. So that is gonna wrap it up on the paint job for the most part. Actually, I think in its entirety. There's nothing that I have to do left for the paint. I did want to clarify the power sander by itself, those pads, the 2000 grit pads is the only ones I used. I didn't try the 3 or the 4000, didn't think I needed them. Those alone did not cut through the orange peel. I think my opinion is that they're not as stiff enough, those pads. They're very floppy and squishy foam. Now, if you think of the orange peel basically like, your knuckle or something, it's real rigid. I think the foam pad was too squishy. It was just kind of conforming to the curves of the orange peel and roughing everything up uniform. It wasn't actually like a stiff block or a pad that chopped off the top of the orange peel and flattened it out. Because when I buffed it up after doing just the 2000, it was still orange peel. It didn't change at all, actually. So what I ended up having to do is block sand everything by hand with 1200 grit. And then I used the power sander with the 2000 floppy disc from Harbor Freight, and that got rid of all of the scratches. So there's really not a lot of visible scratches on those areas where I block sanded with the 1200 and then power sanded with the 2000. The areas where I just did everything by hand, block sanded with the 1200, then the 2000, then the 3000, those still had really deep visible scratches. I think I could get those out if I went over it with the 2000 and maybe the 3000 with the Harbor Freight power sander. I don't care, it doesn't bother me. It looks great in my opinion. I didn't like completely get rid of all the orange peel in the entire car.
places where like on the corners of panels, like door jambs and stuff, and right by the tip, I didn't bother sanding that off because I don't really like buffing right on the edge of the paint. I feel like it's so easy to wear through. I mainly just got like the center sections of all of the panels and the hood, and then, you know, down by the door. I didn't bother getting the clear coat out of any of like the fenders that stick out. You can kind of see one like the wheel well arch. I just did all right up next to it so I could buff it out nice and easily. It took me from start to finish yesterday. I was out here for about 14 hours. And I did take 2 breaks for probably about an hour a piece or 45 minutes a piece. The rest of the time was spent wet sanding and buffing. And I did have my girlfriend helping me out for the latter half of that. That really helped speed things up, move things along. But otherwise, that gives you an idea of how long it took to do the project. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think the paint looks fantastic for what I'm doing. And now I can move on to the rest of completing, you know, this little restoration on my 73 Camaro. You can put the badges back on, you can put in the speakers in the back, put the window on, all that other good stuff.